The smartest thing to do is actually target shows that are very similar to yours or have a very similar audience so that you can have your ad either for your book or your podcast populate as a paid advertisement into other people's podcast segments. Be creative, be unique, put together experiences that are memorable and charge a price that you feel comfortable with, but people are like, you know what, that's definitely worth the experience.
Hey everyone, welcome to the e-commerce traffic and conversion podcast. I'm Scott Brandley and I'm here with my co-host DJ Sprague and our special guest today, Tamara Thompson. Welcome, Tamara.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys for inviting me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, Tamara. We've known Tamara for, it seems like a couple of years now, and we're really excited to have her and her expertise on growing your business with podcasting. So a little bit about Tamara. She's the founder and CEO of Broadcast Your Authority, a podcast content marketing agency. She started her career in 2013 by founding Serious Take Productions, where she created viral films. In 2019, she launched Broadcast Your Authority, growing it into an 8-figure business with a remote model. The agency focuses on a podcast ecosystem, including distribution, optimization, connection, and booking opportunities, while building a strong network of professional leaders. And spoiler alert, FYI, we use BYA or Broadcast Your Authority to produce our podcast. So welcome again.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for the warm introduction.
Absolutely.
Well, let's jump right into it. How did you get into podcasting, Tamara?
Oh, that's a loaded question, but not really. No, I'm just kidding. So, what was interesting, so to make a long story short, back when we had our production company, we had this whole system that we utilized for our clients. So we worked with businesses, authorities, influencers, corporate companies to create short form content that led to a call to action, long form content. And we also directed documentary films for businesses. Of course, we wanted to turn a sustainable model where we could actually create something that was more consistent for companies, right? So I have a filmmaking background. So in the beginning, when I was younger, I was like, oh, it'd be cool if we could just create documentary films for everybody. But, it's not necessarily the scalable model. But what happened was, back then we had what we call teaser videos and, trailer videos, where now we have shorts, reels, TikTok content that are all under 60 seconds. And so we used to produce these teaser videos that would lead to a long form piece of content. And what inspired Broadcast Your Authority was evolved from Serious Take Productions in that method. So back in 2012, we had a teaser video take off that had 888,000 views in a matter of 10 days. And we said, what happened there? We were like, okay, we want to learn this YouTube beast, this marathon. We understood it was a marathon, not a sprint, but all of a sudden we were getting a sprint out of the gate with this particular content. And then what happened from that video, people started finding that content, and then it led back to the full-length documentary film. Then we did it for other clients and other films and things like that. And then all of a sudden, Indie Flicks found us as well and started acquiring our documentary films. And then we said, one time we had like an aha moment where we literally were like, okay, now we started to figure out this YouTube game, right? We're like, what kind of content that can we produce weekly or regularly to hit that, quota that YouTube's wanting on that weekly consistency that could be, the same formula, teaser to long form content. And then we're like, light bulb, let's test out podcasts. And this was a little bit before podcasts became a little bit more popular since COVID. But then we did that. We stepped into it. And what was unique about it, we saw a need for it. We hosted an event. And within that experience, we had several people enroll in the event and then lead into working with us on that model that we shared results over time. And so that's really how we got into podcasting. And then I started my own podcast back in the day. My old podcast was Video Marketing for Business. And the reason I selected the title was because video marketing for business was a searchable term itself. So the keywords in the show itself, the keywords in the episodes, and then we had even playlists on the YouTube channel that also helped that. So podcasting just kind of formulated from this whole experience based from YouTube and filmmaking back then. So that's where it evolved into.
Fantastic. That's quite a journey.
It was. It still is.
So the question on everybody's minds that's tuning in is, how can I use a podcast to generate leads in business? Tell us about that.
I love that question. Yeah, there's different ways that people can generate leads, but it really comes down to first creating valuable content, right? Like you're creating content within your niche. Might seem, boring or whatnot, but it really is true. The reason that virality takes off in certain types of content, especially with YouTube, it's because people see value in what they're searching for on that part. Because once you start seeing that, a lot of the times when you see a piece of content take off, we say, hey, it's important to double down and create more of that. So let's say you guys had a podcast and maybe you had it with a specific guest influencer and that video took off. I would say, hey, that video took off. You had thousands of views on that video. Are you open to asking that person to come back as a guest to do like an encore episode? Because the audience has spoken and said, hey, I like this video, I like that content. So that's one of the biggest things for people to follow the content, then subscribe to your channel. And then, of course, utilize the call to actions that you put within there and offer your lead magnets to get them on your email list, into your funnels, of course, you want them to subscribe to the show or leave reviews and things like that. But that's the main thing, is really just creating content that people actually want to consume. What are people actually searching for on YouTube and Google? And when you start seeing certain videos take off each month, they're like, hey, this one performed the best on YouTube this month. Like, that's a hint saying maybe next month, or, create something very similar. You can't always have the same guest come back if it's interview based, but maybe you have another guest come in that talks on a very similar topic on that regard. So I'd say that's probably the biggest way to generate leads on that side. You could also do like guest appearance and collaborations on that regard. So when you're creating all the micro content from that, having those people accept the collaborations if it's on YouTube or Instagram. So you're going out to their different feeds so that people will see you on their channels as well, not just your own. We do that for Broadcast Your Authority on different remarks too, because hey, this person might have like 10,000 followers. This person might have like 3,000 followers. This one might have like 50,000 followers. So if we're all collaborating, three of us on like one page, it opens the doors for people like, hey, I really liked their episode on this topic. I'm actually going to go follow them. I'm actually interested in, shopper approved or something, whatever that looks like. So there's so many different ways to attract people on that side. Another way to attract leads through the podcast is building out your email list, but also having your email list be attracted to your podcast as well. So people that might find a podcast, they might share it with their list as well. So it's just about promoting it in different ways, or again, promoting your newsletter on your podcast is another way to do that too. So those are just a few things that come to mind.
Yeah. Okay.
That's cool.
Those are all great little strategies. The core obviously is having the right keywords and the right guests that can also help promote the podcast, and a lead magnet, something to give away.
You definitely want the lead magnet part of it too, because a lot of people like hear and see you, and then they're like, oh, I saw something, but I didn't know where to find them, or there's not a call to action, and maybe they forget to go. They see your face and they hear the point, but they didn't follow the page, and then they're scrolling through their feeds. Maybe they saw you in a short or a reel, and they're like, oh no, I like missed it, But if you have like a direct call to action on some of those platforms and they scroll down, and it's like, boom, there's the opportunity for that. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna totally sign up for their free book or their guide or whatever that looks like, because I liked what I saw. I like what I heard. So definitely have the lead magnets in place. That's very important.
Well, the way we do that is on actually this podcast, you're going to see underneath us, you're going to see a little book thing that comes up that says, get our free copy of our book, right? That's how we do the lead magnets on our podcast.
That's a smart way to do it. I love that. I love the
But
name.
I know other people, they add little commercials inside of their podcasts. I've seen that. Sometimes people like verbally say, hey, this podcast is sponsored by this. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's their own product, right?
Yep.
So there's definitely ways that you can promote your
Well,
product?
and you could also do different things too. Like, so you could hire a third party service as well. Something like, let's say, like example, like Podbean, right? So you don't have
Hmm.
to be on their platform as a hosting provider, but you could go actually sign up for something like Podbean for podcast advertising. So you could have the monthly fee and then put a specific ad spend to it to target either your show or your lead magnet or other thing on other people's shows as well to build your audience. So the smartest thing to do is actually target shows that are very similar to yours or have a very similar audience so that you can like have your ad either for your book or your podcast populate as a paid advertisement into other people's podcast segments. Obviously, some people pay to not have podcast ads pop up, but this also is available for those that don't mind that as a marketing effort too.
That's a good strategy.
So you kind of alluded to going on other people's podcasts. Can you talk about that strategy?
Yeah. So at Broadcaster Authority, we have two different sides to our model. So we do the podcasting distribution optimization strategy piece on that part, growing the channels, YouTube, and then there's the booking side of it. So when I say guest appearances, booking is a popular service as well that individuals can utilize. And the smart thing about that is, well, one, you're getting booked on shows. Well, with our agency, we're looking for the top 1 to 10% in your industry. So we want to make sure that you're being booked on reputable shows, that people that have had a podcast for a while, they've got significant amount of downloads, and they're perfect for your niche. The smart thing about it is you're able to utilize these people's audiences. So they've taken the time to build out these larger communities that get thousands of downloads over the years that they've had their shows, and they're happy to have these experts come on their shows. Of course, some of the really large shows, they do require applications and sometimes additional fees. But a lot of the times you'll be able to meet networks of podcasters that are just willing to do either podcast swaps or, you know, things like that. But instead of just doing a swap with someone, I think it's really important to get on the shows that make sense for your niche and your audience. Like, don't waste your time to like just, hey, that's my BFF. Like, it's cool if it's your best friend. You're like, okay, come on my show. It's okay. On that regard. And because when you're looking at it from the business standpoint of a podcast, I think a lot of people start podcasts as a hobby, but we work with individuals and companies that start it for business methods. So utilizing other people's networks, being open to having a conversation with those hosts too, and being humble when you're on the show. So you can say, hey, I thought this was a great conversation with you. How can I help support you? Maybe there's ways that we can talk about future partnerships or ways that you could give back to their community because they just opened the door to their community and so on. And so a lot of the time our clients have conversations with these people that open up more doors, not just the audience piece there, but I think it's just very important to build stronger relationships every time you do have the opportunity to be booked on someone's shows, and never come in with an ego or things like that. It's just stay humble and just build that network, on that side. So it's very, very strong, positive, way to actually build relationships and then get your message out there in your business too. And of course, you can share your lead magnets on their show too, which allows them to come in for marketing efforts on that end. So yeah.
Right. What are some tips that you could give to help people get on other people's shows?
Great question. So we always teach like proper like etiquette on how to approach. I think it's very smart when you're putting together your pitches, right? So do the market research, check out and see if they're ranking, like really kind of even write out your top dream 100 list, but understand that Oprah might not, allow you to be on her show, things like that. But kind of write that out. But I think it's important to do the research first. So you're doing the research on the show, you're positioning it on the factor for a pitch, and then you have a pitch, have multiple pitches ready. So if you have different areas in your business that you want to speak on, write at least 4 or 5 different pitches, almost like you're preparing your own keynote for an event because you're now stepping on an online stage, right? So create 4 or 5 topics, you have your pitch, you have your accolades and everything that you've been credible on, but also pay respect to the show. Do your research so in your pitch it says something about that show and that host and expressing gratitude for the opportunity to potentially be a guest on this show. I think that's one of the things that we always share with our clients is like it's really important to have proper, pitch etiquette and just the way that you approach people with that because you can get a response 10 times faster or actually get a response versus the people that are sending the pitches that are like me
Right.
and they get those pitches all the time, so it's like pay respect, pay a compliment, not just like, hey, I listened to your last episode, it was awesome. What was the name of the episode? What was the topic? What was the point? But you doing that little research there, I think wins in spades basically on that regard.
Well, and show that you understand the audience and that you can add value to their
Exactly.
show and to their audience. Because, if you're coming in and you don't even know who their core audience is and what their pain points are and what the show is trying to accomplish for that audience, and you're off in left field, it's going to be a complete disconnect. So you have to
Exactly.
understand the audience, listen to some episodes, understand what they're trying to accomplish, understand how you can add value. I can
Mhm.
bring value to your audience in these three ways. These are three tools,
Exactly.
tips, strategies, case studies, examples, whatever it is that
Mhm.
I think your audience would find great value in for these reasons.
Exactly,
Mm.
100%. Like, you're providing the reasons of why, and they can read that and be like, "Those are great reasons because you did do your research," and that is the types of things that we do share with our audience, so that's a fine point.
Great. Okay, we talked about lead magnets. We talked about why you'd want to be a guest on other shows. Fundamentally, other than that, why would anybody want to create their own podcast? Let's say specifically in the e-commerce space. Why would an e-commerce website owner want or need to create a podcast?
That's a great question. So, it's a very specific space. I think a lot of the times it's one more avenue for a marketing effort, right? And the size of maybe it's an e-commerce founder or co-founder or a team. Some people are busy and they're like, oh, I don't have time for a podcast. But really, when you comes down to it, you can batch record content and you leverage, a couple hours out of your month, depending on the length of your show, just as one more tool that shows credibility, expertise, knowledge, so that people can actually get to know the company. It doesn't necessarily have to be the founder, but here's content that's providing value in this space, even in the e-commerce space, that they're like, wow, I feel like I actually am getting to know the company or the team or the founder. It's one more thing that's a little bit more, I feel like, an authentic side that shares value and expertise because a lot of, I think, e-commerce brands probably don't even think about adding a podcast to their site in a lot of ways. But I think there's a lot of opportunities coming up that when they think and change their mindset around that, if they feel like they're busy founders in that regard, have your marketing team create the podcast. Have somebody delegated to create that in the department so that you can have more content going out. There's companies that they rotate their staff on the podcast, right? So they'll have like different co-hosts and things like that so they can take turns to different departments to share different expertise that might go with that brand. And I think that could be very strong in the e-commerce space.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
good examples. I mean, if you think about, as you said, the authority, the expertise, there's an SEO value.
Yes.
There's a very, very significant, especially if you really work it and leverage it, a very
Mhm.
strong SEO value in creating another digital asset footprint with keywords, backlinks, promotions
Well,
around your
and not just
podcast.
that, you have the SEO point, though, that you could eventually, once you get stronger with it, get the content going consistently, you can start running paid advertisement behind it because people are resonating with the scrolls and the feeds
Mhm.
watching podcast content on the micro content side, reels, shorts, TikToks. That's one of the largest number of types of micro content, which I mean by micro content is those little clips under 60 seconds that you
Right.
see the vertical content. And so it's proven that those clips that have the authority, that have the face and the knowledge, they tend to perform better sometimes than other types of videos. Of course, you've got TikTok over there that has the creativity and things like that. But when people are looking for business knowledge, this type of content is performing very well on the organic front. Now, think about it when you put a little bit of paid advertisement behind it. If you're going to start Facebook, Meta, Instagram ads, maybe you could lead that into an ad that says, hey, we do messenger ads for our company. So, example, you could do messenger ads for your company and say, hey, comment the word podcast, set up something like ManyChat, and then it sends the direct link to that latest episode, right? So, like, you could start doing different things with the podcast content to lead them back to learn more about the company and the brand and things like that, that again leads them into more about the company.
All excellent points, and all part of driving traffic, authority, credibility, expertise, trust, exposure.
Yeah, the thing I like about podcasts is every single one is its own standalone asset. And it's just going to keep staying out there generating traffic, right? And you never know who's going to like buy your product or who's going to, take an action.
It just lives in the internet webs,
Yeah.
So it's like out there, like spread out there, and it just lives. Like, let's say it lives on YouTube, that could be living there like for a year, and then somebody finds an episode from a year ago. You could have content that takes off later on down the line. We've seen things like that happen too, and you just never know. They'll be like, oh, I saw this episode of XYZ, and you're like, when was that? You're like, oh, yeah, okay, that was like last year. I'm like, that's awesome that you found that because of SEO or search or social media or something, even paid ads if you want to try to drive traffic back. Because once you start to see again those episodes that do have a little bit more views and popularity, those also are great ones to run ads to as well. So
yeah, you can even compile a collage, composition of your top, podcasts and little shorts and whatnot to just kind of create this cool annual, the best of 2024, and make that a fun podcast all by itself as a separate value add.
we actually have done that for clients at the end of the year. So if you'd like that for a compilation, best of the best for knockout before the holidays, you let the team know. I think it's a very smart idea to do that too, especially when it leads into the holidays when people are busy. Here's the best of the best episodes, and it's a compilation episode basically of it. But then you can create the teaser that evolves around that too for marketing. So.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. So shifting a little bit to AI, how do you guys see AI playing into podcasting in the future?
Well, we started utilizing like all the strong AI tools like within our business model, like the day they came out, right? So like over a couple of years ago, it was like November 30th when ChatGPT came out. Like we literally signed up the day it came out, and we're like, okay, how do we help utilize this to make our process more efficient? Right. So like in the podcasting world, we use specific apps and tools. Obviously, it's run by humans to make sure they oversee things, to make sure things that are done correctly. But the way that we've seen it with podcasting services, it helps with the efficiency side of it, right? You still have to have that human touch kind of manage certain things because yes, even with ChatGPT or Copilot or other types of ones that spit out verbiage for social media or things like that, to me, sometimes it still sounds like AI on that regard. But there's so many strong tools that aren't just around like copywriting or spitting out words or keywords or things like that. But those types of things have helped leverage in creating optimizable topics a lot faster. Like, what is it that's actually stronger for the tagging and keywords, for YouTube optimization for these specific titles? Like, there's so many different tools, the automated editing and production of video podcasting captions. You've got things like Video, Descript, Podcastle, Clean Voice. These are all platforms that can be used to enhance the model for the video editing piece of it too. And then of course there's the transcription and translation spot. We use a tool, of course, that spits out the transcription. If we're going in and editing it, of course, it doesn't always spit out the proper grammar at all times. But so that's why you have a human go in and fix those pieces too. But those types of things help create the show notes, the YouTube descriptions. They're pulling out some of the segments. So we definitely utilize some of those points and then go in and refresh it to make sure it has that human touch and authenticity back for the brand. So it's already happening with AI and podcasting. I think with the future part of it, like content personalization, AI can analyze listener preferences and behaviors. There's so many different things that these tools can do now that you're like, what's it going to do? Like, you sign up for a new tool. I'm like, let's try this out. It also helps with enhanced searchability. So there's a lot of cool things that we're testing in that space, and it's just going to keep growing from here, from what I've seen. So just don't be scared of it. Just kind of roll with it. If you want to use it, definitely do. If you don't, it's okay. You can go with the flow on your own pace, but AI is not going anywhere. So I think it's important to just evolve. And I think most people have with this. And I think a lot of people are just excited about AI at this point.
Yeah. Seen some people even upload their content and then the AI creates
Puts it
their
out.
own avatar and does the podcast for them. And
Yep.
it's literally 100% AI driven, which is crazy
I
to
think
think
it's
about.
I think it's cool. I was trying to remember the name of it. There's a few of them out there. The ones that like literally can mimic your voice and
Mhm.
create a podcast for you. I mean, I'd have to go sit and listen to my podcast if I'm like, oh, there's this podcast, but I'm like, hey, this is Tamara Thompson. And I'd be like, no, what am I going to say? Like, what is this AI going to spit out? Like, you give it a topic and then it has now your voice,
Right.
personalization. And I think it's interesting. So I think there's just a lot of ways to evolve, and it might be at some point where people are like, it's my AI that's spitting out the content and the voice, and you know,
Right.
and that's just an interesting thought to me. So I know that these things are happening already, and things are being created in this world. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to watch. So I always kind of jump in, and I want to learn things. I want to be
Yeah.
ahead of the curve and keep up to date with what the hottest tools are, resources, so that we can share that with our team and our clients, and just, spread the news of what's cool or not, what
Yeah.
works or not.
What's in the cutting edge?
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
now for the part that's going to make you really nervous, Tamara. You ready for this?
Maybe.
The $1 million question.
Oh, I want one of those.
We'll send you one if you don't have one already. So at the end of every episode, we always ask the $1 million question. So as an expert in podcasting, what is the one thing that an e-commerce brand can do to generate $1 million or more?
That's a great question. Okay. So I would say that with podcasting in the e-commerce brand side, I would host an event in the e-commerce space that leverages podcasting from the stage, where the e-commerce brand can have guest partners, guest influencers, guest sponsors come into the event, where they can leverage different opportunities to be a part of this high-level podcast. So let's say the e-commerce brand is a high-level podcast. So let's say Shopper Proof's going to host an event, and you're going to find all the big wigs in the space that are open to coming on your show. And then you're going to leverage a sponsored or partnership paid opportunity, where you're going to start to open up the doors. So let's say you have a 3-day event, and you're going to play connect the dots with all these people. You're going to turn around and charge a specific amount. I got to do the numbers.
It doesn't have to be exact. It can be a strategy without, breaking everything down numerically, but
I think what happens there, so let's say you want to build something much bigger than the e-commerce brand. You're going to come in there, you're going to generate this experience. Let's say people pay $10,000 per this experience ticket. Their sponsored spot gets a spot on your podcast from the stage that's leveraged on your show and in person. So everybody's watching it in person. So those certain amount of spots, let's say you do it 3 afternoons. From the stage, you're going to turn around in the e-commerce space, and you guys are smart guys. You guys offer a lot of different things with community and different offers and like networks and larger ecosystems. When you go to the event and you pitch this opportunity, you're pitching this community opportunity, this experience as an e-commerce brand. You're leveraging the people so you're pitching from the stage to join the community for a year, like a mastermind. You're selling the spots on the stage for the podcasting experience, and then you're building that network out. I've seen other types of companies leverage this model to join their community networks, right?
Mhm.
There's no reason why an e-commerce brand cannot do the same thing in that
Yeah.
space. I've seen people that have had 500 people at their events, 700 people at their events, 1,000 people at the events, and they're all generating at least $1 million in revenue that weekend. So I think it could be a strategy for any e-commerce brand to think a little bit differently than the way that they currently market to build their network out. Obviously, they're putting their product and other things within the service for there, but you're building the network. And then you have those sponsorship opportunities that could be leveraged with the podcast. So that would be my strategy.
Okay. That's great. Creative approach to a hybrid strategy of online.
I like hybrid
in-person.
stuff.
Hybrid is good.
I think because when you're building a network and a community on that side, people start to talk more. They like experience working, as an experience. Obviously, you have a product or a service or things like that. At this point in life, to be able to stand out to your competitors, why not do something that they're not even doing because they're not even thinking about it, really. This part, as entrepreneurs, you both and I know the entrepreneur space is different on that regard. If you go into like larger corporations, they're not going to think like this. It really they might, but they're just going to think of it as a corporate thing. I'm going to get a corporate sponsor. They're going to spend $50,000 to be on the podcast, right? Or so on and so on. And you can do that approach as well. You want to bring in corporate sponsors, but if you bring it in at these rates that people can come in as an experience, and it's for maybe small business owners or other business owners, they're going to talk, become raving fans, and they're going to be your brand advocates for the e-commerce brand as well. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Products are commodities, experiences are unique, and experiences create bonds, and the bonds and that community really transcends, right, the product itself.
I like it because you took the event, because you've been in the event space in the past, you kind of understand that model, adding podcasting in, adding networking in, making it a mastermind and putting a podcast in front of it could be cool. People pay a lot for masterminds too. Yeah.
And doing a live podcast, Joe Polish does a live podcast. Many people do. And I think that creates that community, that live event, that, on the stage with the guest right there versus, on cameras. I think there could be some really, really cool things with that strategy.
Yep. Wait until the next Broadcast Your Authority. You'll see some similar thoughts to that.
Okay.
I was like, well, why wouldn't it? Like, why couldn't it work for e-commerce though? It's very much, it can work in different industries, and I think being like, one of the first ones to go in with that thought in the e-commerce brand could be a great opportunity as well. So I mean, people might be doing that in the e-commerce space too, but I don't see that many myself on that side. But be creative, be unique, put together experiences that are memorable, and charge a price that you feel comfortable with, but people are like, you know what, that's definitely worth the experience, right? So you're building rapport, you're offering other things, you're adding a mastermind, you're adding your service or product or anything like that, all within this bundle experience. And people are like, I'm part of something now, something bigger, much bigger than us. It's part of a network and a community.
Belonging, tribalism, community.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Create a tribe.
Yes.
Especially if you have a passion brand, something that people are passionate about. It impacts their life, their ego, their health, wealth, etc. That's where you can really build a passion brand and a tribe. Well, fantastic. So how should people get a hold of you, Tamara? What's your lead hook?
We have multiple, but I'm just going to share our free podcast planner. You can actually find it on our website. If you go to broadcastyourauthority.com, it's up at the top bar. You can access that. You can see a little bit more about what we do. Our podcast tab's on there as well, broadcastyourauthority.com. You can follow us if you're on LinkedIn. Find me, Tamara Thompson. I love Instagram, Tamara Thompson Official, because Tamara Thompson was taken. So I'm Tamara Thompson Official on that part. Or you could also follow our at Broadcast Your Authority on Instagram or TikTok and other places as well. And YouTube.
All of those channels.
Yeah, just Broadcast Your Authority, all of them.
Ubiquitous across the web, coming to a screen near you. Thanks for joining us. We really enjoyed the conversation and working with you and your team. And yes, definitely check out broadcastyourauthority.com. Follow Tamara. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of the e-commerce traffic and conversion podcast. Have an amazing day.